What's up, everyone? Welcome to Unmasked, where things are discovered, uncovered, brought to the light, and made known. I'm your host, Lamar Barrett, coming live to you from PG County, Maryland. If you're interested in finding out about the untold stories behind being a college coach, this is the show for you. Being a former assistant men's college basketball coach for 16 years, there are so many untold stories behind the scenes in the life of a college basketball coach. Now, let's unmask them. Today's guest is a longtime assistant coach. He was a former high school coach as well, a bright basketball mind, an excellent talent evaluator, a tremendous teacher, and then there's a guy who I think is a future star in this business. I believe he should be a head coach in this business, and he's a Chicago, Illinois native, Parham. And before I bring him on, I'll read about his bio. But this was the guy I met when he first came to Maryland Eastern Shore. Man, it's been 20 years ago, but this was the guy, he didn't, one thing I always talked about, Chicago guys, like, you don't know, they're just like a DC, Maryland, Virginia guy. He didn't carry himself. He carried himself as just, you wouldn't even know that he was from Chicago. You thought he was a Maryland guy when he first hit, but talk about his background a little bit. He finished up his career playing at Minnesota State in 1995 after starting off at Lincoln his first couple of years. And once he finished, he ended up going right into coaching. Probably knew that was his passion. He was a graduate assistant at his alma mater for 1 year. And then, for the next 5 years, he became the assistant coach at his alma mater at Minnesota State. And then he got a chance to, when I first met him, Maryland Eastern Shore, he got a chance to come to Maryland and work there for 3 years as an assistant coach. At Maryland Eastern Shore, and my wife, she's a Maryland Eastern Shore grad, so if I don't brag about that, she'll kill me. 2004 to 2006, he goes, back home, and for 2 years he's at Phillips Academy, where he's the head coach, and then 1 year at Morgan Park, he's the head coach 2006 to 2007, before getting back into the business, where he's an assistant at Illinois State for 5 years. And then from 2012 to 2017, he goes over and works with John Gross at Illinois as an assistant for 5 years. And then he goes to the University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin for 4 years. And then he presently gets to come back home. He's at Depaul University in Chicago, where took a job there in May. Man, I want to welcome to the show. This was a good dude, a great dude, who even I was always recruiting Chicago, and I always could stay in touch with him. I want to welcome to the show, man, a guy I've been knowing for like 20 years now, Parham. Welcome to the show, Paris.
I appreciate it, man. Glad to be here. I'm a big fan of yours. You guys accepted me in Maryland. That's why I had to act like I was from there, because when I got there, you guys opened up the door for me, and I really appreciate that. PG County guys were a little nicer than the Baltimore guys.
little bit.
but it was all love, man. I'm glad to be on here and chop it up with you.
All right, man. We're gonna get right into it. We're gonna get unmasked. That's what we're here for. One of the first question I love to ask, like, you went straight from player to graduate assistant. That was your title. We probably know you were doing, basketball related stuff, whether it was recruiting or even coaching and things of that nature. But talk about, like, because there's no handbook to being a college coach. Tell me about your first day, first week, first month, after things are done with human resources or orientation, especially like when no one gives you direction. And plus, you were coaching your teammates that you had probably played for. Talk about that experience, man.
It was unique, because I actually never even thought about being a coach, although, I played the point guard position, and I always thought I had a good grasp of the game and a good IQ. But when I graduated, there was an NBA strike, and it lasted for a long time in 1995. And, basically, there weren't even no jobs overseas or no place at the time. And I was just like, my head coach that brought me in was like, man, if you want to, get your master's degree, we'll take care of that and pay for it. That way you can already have a job. And I was like, all right, cool. Because I went to school. I was an accountant major and a finance manager. So I hadn't, I went, like you said, there's no blueprint of being a college coach. You know what I'm saying? So, it was different, because, coaching your teammates, And we had a rough year. My senior year, we lost last game of the year. We was playing for first place for a championship and lost to the last place team, Nebraska Omaha at the time. They were Division II, and they hadn't won a road game in 5 years and came in our place and just played free and just threw up junk in it. They made plays and we wound up losing that game. So coming back to coach the guys, it was a unique situation because I just felt like I was the only senior on the team. So, you had that feeling of like, something, you left something on the table. Then actually next year they ended up being not as good as we were, but they were still good. But it was unique. And it was different because although I was coaching now and I still was a student, being a grad student, but I had to learn how to, get out of that world of being like a player student. It was good because it taught me to be responsible right away.
That's awesome, man. Like, because everyone doesn't get that chance. You got that chance, and it's funny you say that because I never thought as being a coach myself. My college coach asked me to stay on. I was told I wouldn't do that. He probably was going to be gone in a year, and I left. And I was a accountant, finance. I was finance, economics, and so I went and went into the corporate world. So I understand what you talk about, and and I ended up. Everyone kept telling me I was a coach. Didn't want to hear it, but you end up coming back probably to your passion. Recruiting. We all know that is the lifeline of college athletics. You have to recruit good players. You have to recruit good people, and you want to recruit good students. And good students doesn't always have to be an A student. Sometimes it might not be just a B student, but it has to be a student that cares about going to class, getting his degree. Because a lot of times some of these kids, probably the first generation kids are going to school, so talk about your best and worst recruiting story you may have had over the years. You've been in this for, it's 25 years now. So talk about anything that pops out or jumps out at you. Maybe, it don't have to be a name, but like best or worst recruiting story you've thought about over the years.
I already know my funniest recruiting story is when I first started. I'm from Chicago, going to school in Minnesota, where there's a lot of farm town and small towns. So, where I'm from, I was going to recruit a kid in the small town, a couple towns over from Mankato, Minnesota. And, the address read like 10316 something. And so for me, when I say 103, like, you talk about like the DC area, whatever, I'm thinking 103rd, so I'm looking for these streets, and it's like, by the time I realized where I was in the middle of a straight cornfield looking for 103rd Street when it was really just a number on a house. But I had missed the whole key. It was like the name of the road that was on the back end of it. You know what I mean? So I wound up being lost for like 30 minutes. And during this time, there was no cell phones. This was 1996. There was no cell phones. You were lucky if you had a car phone, you had big money. But I had to like finally find my way out of the cornfields, which I was lost in, just taking side roads. It got dark, and I came up on a little gas station. They had one pump. That's all. It was a stand and a pump, and it was a guy in there sitting there. It was almost like a newspaper stand, and he kind of told me where I need to go. He was like, "Oh, it was a kid name was Josh Zemke." He said, "Are you going to the Zemke farm?" And I had no idea. And, the crazy thing about it during that time, you talk about recruiting different people and being in a long time. I was young and, I tried to use my energy. I remember the kid telling me that he loved wrestling. And I talked to his high school coach. And he told me who his favorite wrestler was. And I remember going to this is when Walmart had just started. Like Walmart was fresh. Went to a Walmart and got I forget who it was, but it was one of those old wrestlers. And I bought a T-shirt of the wrestler and had it up under my shirt and tie. Went out there talking to the family. I'm like, so what do you like to do? He was like, I love wrestling. And I'm like, who your favorite wrestler? And he told me, and I popped my shirt open and I'm like, man, that's mine too. I hated wrestling. It was so phony. But that was just like one of my stories early on. Like really trying to have the energy and just trying to figure out my own lane. Because all my life, I think I've been good with people. And that helped me out a lot being in Minnesota where, I went to a school where it was 2% black. And I was recruiting kids that didn't look like me. When I played at Minnesota State, it was me and another guy. He's left after the first month, but I wound up being the only black guy on the team. So, it was a unique situation for me, but it taught me a lot because being from the inner city, I'm from the projects in Chicago, and then going out here and these people were milking cows and they had chickens, and I had never experienced anything like that, but it taught me early on both sides of the street. So that was one of my best ones and funniest ones because I did get lost out there and had a great time, eating, breaking bread with the family off food that they cooked, that they cut. They killed those animals, sliced them, cut them, and did everything right there on the farm. And that was a unique situation. I'll say one of my worst, and if people know me, they know what I went through when I was at University of Illinois, and it was the Cliff Alexander deal. Spent a lot of time with Cliff. I just saw him last week. He owed me a couple dinners. But anyway, it was, I thought we had Cliff done, and it was the switch of the hat. When he picked our hat up, he put it on his head and took it off and then picked up the Kansas hat. That probably had to be the worst recruitment story time because even our fans, they were having watch parties at the time. Cliff was number 2 in the country, and we was really just trying to get U of I back, back going. So it was just one of those things that, it just put it in perspective. Like you can't control recruitment. A lot of people try to. You just never know what these kids are thinking, what their parents are thinking. They'll let you in their home. They'll tell you stories. They'll make you feel good. But at the end of the day, there's always a underlying factor that can make a kid change his mind or do some things that you thought was going to happen, and they switch them up on you. So it's probably the worst. But like you talked about, you have to get good guys, and I'm a guy of strong values, man. I've been married for 24 years, and my kids are both finishing up school. One just graduated, and I try to instill in them the same thing, just about value. So it's hard for me not to deal with good people because I want to be honest with people, and I want people to believe me, and I want to have a great relationship. And when you take a kid out of his parents' home, you want to you got to finish off the job because the parents have made them, grow them up to a certain age. And if you got kids and people out there who have kids, once your kids get 17 to 18 years old, they want to hear something different. They've been on you've been on them for a while. And I think our job is to grow them up as young men. After that, they come to you kind of knowing some things. If the parents give them a good foundation, like when my kids went to college, even in high school, when they got to high school, and I work in this job that I work, how it is when you're a college coach, you're gone most of the time. You're missing birthdays, you're missing games, you're missing Thanksgiving dinners. And, the high school coaches spent more time with my guys than I did. And was definitely when they went to college, I'm spending more time, I'm sure, with these kids that I have now, they spend with their parents in years. So, you just want to be around good people and, always try to be genuine as possible. That's my deal, man. Cause, you could always make a mistake once in a while in a business where there's a lot of lying and there's a lot of untruth being told. I just try to, make sure that I'm always genuine with people.
And that's a key word, genuine. I mean, I love that. And you touched on something that actually leads right into my next question. And I ask this a lot because people don't understand it. And you said something about it. Like, what did you have to sacrifice to achieve your current level of success? And you kind of said something about it, especially with family, because time is huge. I mean, people have no idea. They think like, they always ask the question, P, like, so what do you do during the down season? Like, there is no down season. We're always on the go. Like, 12, 15-hour days, you got to call recruits, so you're always doing something. And I don't think people understand. They see the finished product, but they don't see what goes on behind it. Like, we don't have vacations, if you do, you're still on vacation.
And you're working though.
You're like calling the recruit, trying to get them on campus when you get back. So talk about what you had to sacrifice to achieve your current level of success.
Well, it's funny you said that because my grandmother, who was a big, followed me everywhere and big fan, and she came to games and stuff. After our last game, she would always call me, and I'd be like, "I'm headed to work." She'd be like, "The season over. What you going to do?" I'm like, I got to get some more guys. It's film to break down. So, like you said, the job is never ending. But when you talk about sacrifice, man, like when you have a family, I was blessed. My wife has been a king. She's been a king because, she's traveled places. Now, I've been fortunate enough to stay places for, a long time. And I've been in a 2-mile radius of Chicago for the last 10, 14, 15 years. So that doesn't happen a lot. But with that being said, we lived in some small towns. We lived in some towns where, it's hard for her to go and make friends. And, we lived in Milwaukee. She worked from home. So it's just like not always easy for your family. Then you talk about your kids having to move. I remember my oldest son, we went from Illinois State to Illinois. I'm thinking like, what's only a 40-minute ride, 40 miles away. But he was going into high school. So he left and went to a new city, new high school, 2,700 students. And he didn't know anybody. And so you start thinking about the effect that it had on the kids. But, a lot of people have been congratulating me for being back home, saying that, I know you're happy to be home. I'm telling you, the biggest thing for me in coming back home is for my wife. She's from Chicago too. I'm happy for her. Like, she's been able to go out with her girlfriends, see her family members more. Our kids are both gone, so we empty nesters now. I'm more excited for her opportunity to just do some of the things that she hasn't been able to do, because she's following me around. And you're talking about, like, you miss holidays, you miss birthdays, you miss, missing my son's senior nights. It's like it's something that happens and you never think of it, and you're always gone. But one thing we established early on was, I learned this early. I come from a large family, and you got a chance to meet a lot of my family when you recruiting in Chicago. But we tried to have activities. Whenever I was home, me and the boys and her, we had dance contests. We had, we did coloring books. We just always tried to do something that made us sit around the table as a family, because that time was valuable to me. And, it's a time, I'm going to throw another word out there. When you're home, you got to be accountable. It's a lot of things that, a lot of guys are like, wow, I'm bringing in all the money. I get to do whatever I want to do. But these people are human. They have lives, they have feelings, and they need you there. So, and another good thing, and you've done this, I'm sure, as well. You have to, your team, the guys you work with, they become a part of your family as well. So, you talk about these kids that now, look at some of the guys that I coach that's getting new contracts today, and thinking about when I first brought them to campus, I first had them at my house for a meal, teaching them how to use the right forks. You know what I'm saying? Just all the little stuff that my family accepted and, had to just deal with because it was a part of the job.
You're throwing out a lot of stuff. You know what? You're making my job easy today, because you're saying some things, so it's going to lead into some other things. We talk about scout reports, man, and people, once again, have no idea. They think you just show up to the game and all that, but you're watching 7-8 film, 7-8 games, sometimes more. You like, you implement the game plan, you expressing it with the head coach. Everyone usually can tell whose scout it is. If you're watching on the sideline, why is that coach more animated than others? You also, like, you're telling coach, he's 4 for his last 25 from 3, and then he makes his first 2, coach turning at you like, you told me he couldn't shoot. Now, coach, I didn't say that. I said he was struggling. But then you also got to know how much information you can give to these kids. As much as we get caught up, it's competitive. As much as we get caught up in making sure we master the scout report, we can't give them too much, because then they're going to go overload. And so they got a lot of things going on. School, they got a social life and all that. Talk about your best and worst scout reports you may have had over the year that just jump out at you, like, and especially a lot of times is when guys are early. Because once you figure it out, you get your own rhythm, or coaches have their own style. You got to figure out what he wants. Talk about your best and worst scout reports.
I just want to touch on something there for, like, those who are listening that really don't know how this thing is. Most staffs, it should go, every third game, you should have a scout. But for us, and I'm talking about most of the African-American assistant coaches who've been in the game for a while, how many of us, or how many of us, well, I'll just say us, that, don't have a chance to scout. You know what I'm saying? I'm raising that point to say, like, there's no job that I would ever take if I can't be involved like every other assistant coach. And we have some guys out here that's done it, and they're just labeled as recruiters. I remember listening to something with Chad Dollar. If anybody knows him, Chad. I was talking about where a guy told
Chad
him
was a guest on the show. He was a
yeah,
guest.
basically told him he could miss the game to go recruiting, and just some things that like we're equal. You know what I'm saying? And we have the knowledge just like other people. But I've been fortunate enough, and like I said, I probably wouldn't take a job if I couldn't, because it's a major part of it. And you can't be a head coach if you can't put a plan together, a game plan. So to not be able to do that is already pigeonholing you in a certain way. So best scouts, I guess I can say when I was in the Big Ten, coaching in the Big Ten was huge, because I've been a fan of it all my life. But having Michigan State, and then looking down at Izzo, who's a great, and being able to call out his plays. You talk about scout reports. Beating Michigan State at Michigan State, that's like a huge win. Or the Gonzaga scout. I had that scout. Going in that at that time they had only lost 7 games in the kennel. But I scout to the point, man. You talk about watching a game. A good friend of mine that and people know and watch. When Conzo Martin was at Missouri, he was so involved in the game on the sideline that basically I would tell him, like, he was very animated, and I would watch him on the sideline during a game and kind of start picking out when he was drawing up a new play for after a timeout, which you call an ATO, or he was running something they had just scored on, because he would like lick his finger, wipe his eyebrows. Anytime he was going to the post, he would like dig in like he's trying to like post up like on a. So you got to watch this thing to the point where everything that's happening in the game, and you can't give that stuff to your kids, but you can watch it, because they're not going to be paying attention to the coach. But like you talk about information overload, and it just depends on who you work for. Some guys want to know, like, okay, listen, scout report. Like when I worked for Tim Jankovic, he just wanted to know shooter, driver, rebounder. He don't want to know if he's going to dribble 2 times to the left and then spin back. He's going to shoot a step back. Now, John Gross was different. He was an information guy. He wanted to get the guys a lot of information. And, the guys learn to adjust to it, and who you have to have some extra time with. But it's fun scouting, man. Scouting is fun, especially when you can sit on the sideline and call stuff out before it's coming. We had a big game last year at the end of the year with IUPUI. And I remember, Penn State used to run the same play. It was just like a guard on guard flip screen. They want to cause some confusion because, guards sprint up to the top of the floor, and just, being able to yell that stuff out before it's happening, and doing a timeout, say, listen, the last 3 games, they ran this play at this time, at this juncture of the game. Look, you guys look for this, and to be able to stop it is just, you're not the head coach, so you're not getting the credit for that. But when you feel that, your work is done, it's a good feeling.
Definitely is a good feeling, man. I mean, you're touching on a lot of points, and I really appreciate that. What's the biggest challenge you think you've experienced since you've been in college coaching?
Just opportunities. Like I've liked everywhere I work, even Maryland Eastern Shore. When I left Division II Minnesota State, which is one of the best Division II programs in the country as far as facilities, budget. Their assistant coaches are making over 100,000 there, so it's like, they have everything. And even leaving there back in 2001, going to Eastern Shore was a great experience for me. It was an experience that made me appreciate stuff, and it was also the experience that made me be creative. You had to be creative because you were without some things, and you were around that time, and you remember how it was when you're on the road and you can only do so much, and certain kids looked at you a certain way. But I would just say, for me, the biggest challenge has been opportunities to get in front of ADs and people that matter, because your friends are going to be fans of you if they know your work. Your neighborhood is going to be fans for you, especially when you're from like a place from Chicago. Everywhere I go, they're like, "Man, when you gonna get your own job? When you gonna get your own job?" Then it becomes a fact, and I hope I'm not jumping ahead of anything. Is like what they want to give us. The job they want to give us as our first opportunities. And I've had some head coaching interviews, but it wasn't for jobs that I felt like I wanted to be at to be successful. And when you get to the level of being a high major assistant, some of these jobs now, it's like they don't even, talk about the pay. A lot of guys have to take a pay cut to take jobs. And it's not always about the money. You want the opportunity, a chance to prove yourself, but you also want to be in a situation where you feel like you will have a chance. You will have a chance. So I've had some opportunities that, I turned down because I just felt like not it wasn't the right job, because who knows what the right job is, but you also just want to feel like you have a chance. And, they give us some opportunities that are otherwise challenging.
That is true. I mean, I look at it, and I always say this, and you were in the MEAC, but some of the best coaches are in the MEAC. They just don't get an opportunity like some other guys have. And you're 100% right. And it's a lot of great assistant coaches, high major assistant coaches, that's just like, nah, man, I'm not taking that job because I don't want to get stopped. I mean, that's going to end up happening.
That's it.
You only get a certain amount of time. Like, you only take one of the worst programs, and like within 3 years, you got to be winning the league. Like, you got to have people in higher up in administrative, not just the AD, the athletic department, but they got to be the president. Like, everybody got to be on board. So, that's one thing. Young people, you got to realize, like, every job is not for you. You got to pick out the best situation. Pete, like I said, you've been in for 25 years, and like I know when I used to see you and you came in the gym, whether we were in Chicago or where we was out in Vegas, like wherever we were, I knew you. You came in, you were locked in, you were watching your guys. You wasn't a guy who, like, you might, hey, you speak to people, but you wasn't. Some guys come in and talk, and they don't even concentrate. But like, do you ever find that there are things about you that people misunderstand? I know one thing people don't misunderstand about you. You're personable. You can talk with anyone. But do you find that there are things about you that people might misunderstand?
Yeah. First of all, I'm a style guy. You know that. So I like my fashion. And a lot of times, because I don't dress the normal way, like with the quarter zip or always have on the school clothing or the right color, this or that. I believe we're all individuals, and if you go in there looking like everybody else, you're gonna be put in a box like everybody else. So I think sometimes people might think I'm a little arrogant, but I think I'm far from it. I'm confident in who I am and in the job I can do. But there's a guy that worked with me in Milwaukee, Terrence McGee's, like the second week we were together, he's like, "Man, I gotta tell you something." And I'm like, "What's up?" He's like, "Man, people was telling me, like, because you have been in Illinois and you've been a high major, he's like, watch, he gonna act like he too good for you or whatever. And you're the total opposite of what everybody said." And if somebody said that, that means they definitely didn't know me, because I'm the same guy. I'm the same guy I was when I worked at Maryland Eastern Shore as I am that I work at Depaul or any place else. I'm just trying to get ahead of the game like anybody else. So that would be the only thing. And the one thing in the recruiting thing that's funny is, like, people think that I, like, since I've been back in college after, doing high school for a while, it's like, oh, he would never leave the Midwest. Like, he's straight Chicago. And, I am from Chicago, and a lot of people come recruit in Chicago. So I should probably recruit where everybody else recruiting from if I if I got a hand up or a hand in a bag already. So that's another thing. Like, people think that, I'm so tied into Chicago, but I've been some other places and recruited good players from other states as well.
I mean, and that's what you're right. That's a label, because you mentioned Chad Dollar, like, he's a Georgia guy. Everybody the same way with him, like, oh, he's an Atlanta guy, so he, and like, Chad said the same thing. Like, no, I can recruit other places. It's just not Atlanta, and you're the same way. Like you've recruited other places. It doesn't have to be just Chicago. We're all educators in this business, P. Like, coaching is that's what it is. It's so what do you try to educate, teach your players besides basketball?
You know what, man? I'm huge on just like everyday life. So, I don't try to talk to guys in a sense of like making them not feel that they don't know something, but try to put them in situations where everything is a learning, never a losing situation. If they don't win a day, they learn something from the day. So and that comes from everything like I was talking about, teaching guys, proper etiquette in restaurants, not wearing do-rags, just like what their worth are, what their worth is, and just the whole experience and how valuable every day is when you're on a college campus and taking advantage of that. So that's just me with the basketball is just a part of it. If you can get them to understand, life situations and being a stand-up person and being accountable, the basketball will handle itself.
Yes, sir. You're 100% right. This could be kind of interesting. This is an entertaining one. What is the strangest or weirdest thing a player has done outside of the basketball court that you just like, wow, I can't believe they did this? Or, like it might have been something they were coming to the gym, but like, what's something that you just like, that was just strange or weird? Because we do deal with like,
oh, you deal with some
kids.
stuff. I've had some. Hey, I've had some things and seen some things. God, I once coached a guy that we didn't know that I won't even say where it was at, but he would go around at nighttime. He would drink and just go out and knock people out, walk down the street and just punch people. And it caught up with him because he got in trouble from the police and was caught up in a bad situation. But it was the craziest thing. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, and so they were afraid of him. And we had an incident in practice where he like kind of snapped off and I had to grab him for a second. And the guys was like, man, you shouldn't have touched him. And that's what kind of days like he be knocking people. I'm like, what y'all mean? Like he just walk up to people and be like, sorry, I got to do this. And just, yeah, it was the craziest thing ever. And we found out that he needed some help. We got the kids some help, but you see some crazy stuff, man. One of the crazy stories I had a kid. It was his first time flying, and he asked us, coach, like, how do you let the windows down? Yeah, so like you get some stuff, man. Like, wait, son, like we finna be up in the air, like the windows don't come. He was like, it's hot, man. How you let these windows down? Like,
that's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Yeah, you get some stuff, man. You get some stuff. You get some
you
stuff,
do because they're kids, and like you said, that was his first time. You don't know, so
yeah.
What's the biggest accomplishment? And I'm not one. I mean, what's one of the biggest accomplishment you have experienced since been a college coach? Because a lot of people always equate those to wins a lot of times. What's one of your biggest accomplishments that you've experienced?
I give you two, man. Two things. One is the development of what I call my first team is Team Parham. Like to be able to develop, my family's foundation, and because it's all trial and error. There's no book you can read about how to be a great parent and how to get your kids through college and how to make your kids respectful and how to make your kids know what the grind is. And I say that to say, like, I just tell people about my youngest son. My oldest son's going to be very successful as well. He's very talented. But like my youngest son has been in California in school for 2.5 years, and I've never sent him $1 because he's just always on a grind. He's always innovative and making. He's a creative, is what he says he is. So just first of all, just being able to be married in an occupation where divorce rates are really high is I think my first greatest accomplishment. Just the whole family piece is good, but For me, I had a kid. His name was Tony Lewis. He played for me at Wendell Phillips High School. And if you're from Chicago, you've been around Chicago. Wendell Phillips, when I went there, it was a weird thing, me even going there. I just met these kids at the park and couldn't believe how talented they were. They needed a coach. And it was really the school. They called me Coach Carter at the school. My name is Parham, but the school was just like that, like that school. And there was a kid that played. I remember he came to our gym the first day for trials. And he was, tall. And the second day I went to the school, he was like in a big gang fight. And he was like fighting 6 dudes by himself. So he was like a tough dude. His name was Tony Lewis. And we wound up, getting a hold of that kid and teaching him, we taught him a jump hook. All we taught him was to do was hook the basket, just a spin hook. That was it. And this kid wound up playing for us for 2 years. And I wound up leaving and going to Morgan Park his senior year. Sent him to Ellsworth Community College in Iowa. He was a first team All-American, averaged 23 and 11 for his 2 years in junior college. Then he came to Illinois State, and I'll never forget this day. Phillips wasn't a school. The kids never even had books. They didn't take books home. They didn't have books in the classroom. It was kind of like a holding cell because most of the kids there wasn't going to do anything with their life. 90% of the kids at the school was on some type of medicine for, behavioral issues. But this kid was at Illinois State when I was there. And I remember the academic person coming in and was like, listen, there's no way this kid can make it. Like he reads at a 4th grade level. His comprehension is bad. And I just remember like basically crying tears right there. Like, you know what? I've been with this kid. And if you tell this kid to knock this building down, he'll figure it out. And about 2 months later, the lady came back in and she met with us and was like, I can't believe like this kid comes in at 5 a.m. He leaves at 2 a.m. I said, he's going to do anything that you tell him to do to make it. Cause that's all he knows is to try. And to watch him walk across the stage at Illinois State University with a degree in not general ed and a degree with criminal justice, criminology degree was like one of my greatest accomplishments, just being able to help this kid and take a kid from my neighborhood where I grew up at that otherwise nobody would have given a chance. And they didn't give him a chance there to watch him get it done. The lady had actually left and went to Kansas, but she came back for his graduation. And those are moments like that. There's a couple kids that I brought out of our neighborhood that I'm from that have graduated from college. And I see some of them, and the first thing they say is, man, coach, they got great jobs. They're like, man, none of this would have happened without you. So watching those kids that people didn't give a chance, graduate from college and then have families and to meet their kids and, but them to be like, man, this is the reason why me and your mom's got a life, those are accomplished for me. The wins and losses are good, but to just see young men grow up and get themselves a chance in life is my biggest accomplishments.
Wow, man, that's awesome. That's deep, man. Great job for that. Like what movie or TV show title best describes, your week, your month, and you like, this is what my life is about. Like what that's what this basketball and all, like what movie or TV show type best describes your week?
So since I threw Coach Carter out there, I got to put that out there because anything I do, I believe in discipline, and it's just all comes back to accountability. You know what I'm saying? And that whole movie, Coach Carter, was about teaching them kids. He did it his way, and we all got. There's no, like you said, there's no written book that you got to do certain things a certain way, but just his discipline, his commitment to holding guys accountable, and then him holding himself accountable. That's one part of my day because this practice, that's the games, Then I would throw in like the movie Hitch because I love to have fun, and that movie was a movie that was a lot of fashion in that movie. I always go back to the fashion piece. Will Smith playing Hitch, and I have a lot of people come in town to Chicago, and I'm not hooking them up with women, or teaching them how to hook up with women, but I'm teaching them how to be in Chicago. Like, so even the guys on our staff, like Bino from Baltimore, and Steve Thomas from New Jersey, and then we got our Dobos from California. So just even hooking those guys up with the whole Chicago scene is kind of like a hitch type deal. And then at the end of the day, I would go with got to get something that's got some kind of love story into it for the wife. In any movie that has to do with like a helpless romantic, that's me. I bring flowers home once a week. Set up some kind of dinner. I'm gonna stop at the store and pick some up to bring home. So any movie that's got anything to do with like a guy that loves his wife and kids, that's me. So I think there was a movie called I Love My Wife and Kids. That's me. That's me right there. That's
the best stuff right there.
Hard nosed, fun, fashion driven, and then a lot of loving.
Love it. Love it. What's your favorite word or phrase you like to use?
Ooh. Don't let now determine your future. So don't let the things you do right now that's going to be in the past determine your future. And I say that to my kids a lot. They heard that all the time. But I tell that to players because, you coach and you get a lot of guys who have talent. And then, the work they didn't put in when they had the chance to, then they always want to go back and say, I could have, would have, should have. So one of my biggest saying is like, all right, don't let this day determine your outcome of something in the future. That's just something I hold true to myself. Even like, in this profession, you got to build relationships. And sometimes you got to go out of your way to make sure that a relationship is right. And I think the only reason, me being from Chicago was a huge part of me being able to be at Depaul and at Illinois at the time as well, and Illinois State, but also just being a relationship guy with people and making those relationships, not just like when I see you, writing letters to people, emails, when you're in a guy's town. I remember like we played Oregon, and I made sure me and Stubbs went out to dinner the night before our game. When he came to Chicago, he would recruit, we would get together. It was just, you have to build on relationships. And I think that's just what it is for me.
Love it. I love that, man. I'm writing stuff down as you're going. So I actually love that. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Probably something from my dad. And I'm a great listener, but I'm a better watcher. I'm a great listener, but better watcher. My dad actually thought I was too nice to be a coach. He's like, man, you too nice, man. You can't coach nobody hard. So that always stuck with me, just to make sure that I was always doing that. But the best advice, it sounds gonna be corny, but it's so real. It's real to this moment. As right before I got on the phone with you, happy wife, happy life. Hey, you don't get no better than that, especially in a profession like this. I can talk about some stuff people say in the profession, but I can work all day and have wins and whatever. But if I go home and that ain't right, ain't nothing right. So I'm gonna stick with that one.
Hey, you are so right. Look, my wife used to always, and I said it a little bit earlier, and I was like, she'd be like, you got Coach Barrett before you come in the door, and you got Lamar when you're at home. And and that's what you got to learn. It's like, don't bring that stuff home, And so, like you talked about, and you got to make sure, she's happy. You're like, and I say it all the time. I totally agree with you. Happy wife, happy life. That is totally true. Because, like you just said, like, I don't make a decision without her when it comes to taking a job. Like, that's always been the case, because she got to be able to live there as well wherever we go. And so it don't, like, the money doesn't matter. It's like, okay, can you be here? Pete, like, success, man. Everyone has different ways they define success. Some people get caught up in wins and losses. You talked about your kid that graduated, that like wouldn't have gone to college or things of that nature. But like, what does success mean to you?
It's funny. I just read something talking about some. It's not important. Your success doesn't rely on pretty much what you have or what you've done. It's about what you've done for other people. So that's just me all day long, man. Like I think I help to a fault, but somebody put it out there for me. My family was like that. My dad was like that. I just determined that by how many people you can help, like how many people you can help, and then like how many people. I heard this before from a guy who's a world class speaker now, Walter Bond. He said that when he meets somebody, he wants to make it an invitation to his funeral. He wants to make that first. Say he want to make a good enough impression when they say, "Man, so and so died. Oh, I got to go represent him at his funeral." So that's the success part to me. Just like how many people can you genuinely say that they appreciate you because of who you are? It's always not because of what you've done for them, just because you're a good person. And that's why I think my success lies. Is just the amount of people I can call, and not, well, I need to ask for some whatever, but people I can call and pick up the phone.
That sounds so true. And once again, it leads into one of my next questions, because you've always been a selfless guy. You're a servant. You're not a self-promoter. If you had to choose 3 adjectives to describe yourself, which would you choose?
I'll switch it up on you. I'm gonna do this for you. Somebody asked me this before. If I had to describe myself as a food, what would it be?
As a food, huh?
As a food. Yeah, if I had to describe myself as a food, what would it be? And I'm gonna say, I always say a garbage can pizza. Because you can get a garbage can pizza where you have it some areas you just want veggies, some areas you just want cheese, some areas you just want meat. And I've been blessed enough to learn like all parts of the track. You know what I'm saying? I grew up where I had to take an extension cord a couple of days out the month and plug it up in the hallway so we had lights in the house. You know what I'm saying? I had to cut open that box of cheese and that fake tang and put it in some water so I can have something sweet to drink. You know what I'm saying? So now I've also been able to sit down and get a meal that costs whatever, the highest meal in the building is, or whether, wear whatever or fly whatever, have my family on private jets. So I'm going to say more than three adjectives that describe me. I want to describe myself as somebody that's almost like a kamikaze that can just fit in and just do whatever is needs to be done, but be comfortable in my skin still. That's the biggest thing is like, more than an adjective. I'm just always want to be known as a person that's, no matter what situation I'm in, I'm comfortable in my skin. Like when I was in Baltimore and Chicago, PG and DC is totally different. But I went out there as Paris and didn't try to become nothing else that was going to hurt me or make guys look at me different. Just being able to adapt.
That's deep right there. And I love that. I like that though. The garbage can pizza. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I like that.
What person and or event has had the most influence on your life?
My father by far. My father was like my best friend. It's crazy. I tell people this all the time. I said I would never coach high school basketball. I had no interest in it. But when I left Maryland Eastern Shore, I was home and I was getting some job offers, but it was just nothing that I really wanted. And, I moved back to Chicago with a master's degree, with, being very educated in fields that where I could have probably got a job making some good money, I went back and was a substitute teacher that didn't have a, in Chicago, you work for the public school system, you have a job number. You don't have a title, you have a number. I went back without a number and was doing this job. And I thought I was doing it to really, decide if I really wanted it or not. But Phillips High School was around the corner from where my parents lived at. And I got to see my dad for 2 years straight when I went back as the high school coach for Phillips, and he passed away. And I hadn't lived in Chicago since I was 18 at the time. So, you have some things that you think like, you're doing something for one reason, but God's got a whole nother plan. And that experience right there in itself just made me a different, put me in a different place in belief of not trying to control everything and not knowing what the true destiny for something is. So that's something that really stuck with me. And even now, when I moved back here, we had a family situation where there's somebody that needs some tending to, and we're home and it works. So just those situations with family. If you anything you talk to me about, man, is going to revolve around family, because that's what I know, and that's important to me. That's where I grew up. For those who don't know, I'm from the biggest family in Chicago. My dad, it was 11 of them, 9 boys and 2 girls. And they all got 5 kids. We all got kids. So, family, anything is about family. Then when my father passed away, it was something that, it was an experience that, it was undescribable, but it was something that kept me. I was glad I was able to spend them years with them.
And that's the thing about it. Like I had that situation 5 years ago, and you always say why things happen, and it's kind of like I was wait, not like, and I look at it now and I'm like, maybe he didn't want me to be there when he was 6. So like, you never know. You know what I'm saying? You never know. Which I had been there 3 years with him, and it was like time to go. So I truly understand what you're saying, because I'm a family person myself. I like to end with this question, because I want you to think a little bit, or how you think about your career sometime. Like, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your young self or your younger self to help you prepare coming into this profession?
This is kind of a question that my wife, we always ask her, like, would you have done anything different? So here's why I like the road I took, because I can't really think of anything I would have done different, because being a grad assistant for a guy that I played for allowed me to be on the floor right away. So it allowed me at 25 years old to be able to do scouting reports right away, which put me ahead of a lot of people because they weren't getting those opportunities. And it allowed me to get out on the road and recruit. So I can't think of a lot of things I would have done different. There is one. I will say that when I was at U of I, I probably stayed too long because it was home. It was like, damn, I work at the University of Illinois. I was the first Chicago Public League student to like be a coach there. So it was some things that was fascinating about it. And it was the state school and that orange and blue. And it was, the line out was popping, you know what I'm saying? But it's just one of those things. I probably, if I could do it over again, when we had some success, not that I would have to just bail for anything, but I probably would have tried to maybe even harder than become a head coach. But I was still learning though. So you just never know when it's time. But that might have been one thing that I would have done is probably would have left, because I just didn't like the way it ended there, because, we had some things that happened that was out of our control, but that was probably going to be the one thing I would have done, is probably try to leave Illinois a year or two earlier.
I understand. Well, look, P, I want to thank you again, man, for being a guest on the show and being unmasked. Anything you want to leave with the people? You've dropped so much knowledge, man, so much jewels, but anything you want to leave with the viewers before we go?
I'll just shout out to any. I'll just say this to any young guys that's watching and trying to build and get in this profession. There was a guy that I talk to all the time. He's assistant coach at Wisconsin now. His name last name Sharif. But I would always tell him, if you got a good job and you're working for good people, embrace that. Embrace it. Not that I worked for bad people or didn't have any good jobs, because I've had great jobs. I worked for some great head coaches, and I had some great assistants beside me. But sometimes we get a little ahead of ourselves, and everybody wants to be at the top, and everybody wants to be a high major assistant. But sometimes you just got to enjoy your spot you are. Enjoy where you are, because you just never know what it's going to lead to. You just never know how that thing's going to change. So I just would, like to say that to young guys that's watching or listening. Be humble in the space that you're in. You just never know what's going to happen. That's one thing back again to my family and my kids. I always talk to them about being humble in their space that they're in. My youngest son is a actor at 20 years old. He's got a SAG card. I mean, he's been in stuff. He's got stuff going on all the time. My oldest son's a singer, writer, musician. He's got stuff going on. I just tell him that, wherever you are right now, make that your big time. That's kind of, I stole that from Coach Baldwin. That was great. Like where you are right now, make it the best job you got. Like it's the best job you ever had, and then do your job and let it go from there.
That's awesome. And I'm gonna thank you, and just like I thank Tracy Webster, Rodell, Keem, like all you guys, like didn't treat me like an outsider. As much as I spent, how much time I spent in Chicago, what I'm saying? So all you guys were like, no, man, like you welcome in. Like you just like us. So I appreciate all you do, all you guys for that.
I remember your first time up at Kenwood. He was like, P, you walking around here like you own the place. I said, well, that's my cousin, Steve. And the head coach is my best friend. We shared diapers together. So
yeah, I remember that. So look, thank you viewers for watching another great show. Stay tuned for the next guest as we get them unmasked. See you next time and stay safe.
Peace.